my pod pals, we're back with the Flow Bros, Matt and Joe. Let me explain what just happened. Because if you are watching live, that's one thing. But if you're listening to the audio, you're going to be like, okay, what's going on? So you guys know how I like to keep it real with the audience, and shit happens in the podcasting world. And I could use the magic of editing, all that. I'll do that a little bit just so it makes sense. But like probably 15 minutes ago in the audio, my Wi-Fi just bombed. It wasn't my Wi-Fi, it was my internet. My Xfinity, everyone call Comcast and complain on my behalf. It just dropped. And the pros that Matt and Joe are, they just roll with it. And they just teach. And I'm like texting them. They're like, we're just dropping knowledge, bro. Keep trying to fix it. And so that was awesome. So a big shout out to those guys. And that shows you what the level of professionalism that they're at. So now we're going to kind of tie this up and put the baby to bed, so to speak.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys, obviously you ran with it. You dropped some great tips on your own. Like it was a takeover. So I want to put you guys in the framework of if you had to relaunch a show in this day and age. So I'm of the opinion that podcasters that launched 10 years ago, and even like, what year did you guys launch? Like 2015, 2016, something like that?
This one is 2017.
2017. Okay.
I started podcasting in 2010. So we do have a frame of reference of what like a decade ago as well.
So I think it's different. A decade ago to 5 to 6 years ago to now, it's different shades of podcasting situations. And I feel like one of the issues is there are some OG experts that are teaching it like it was 2008, 2010 style. And a lot of that stuff doesn't work now. So if you were to relaunch today, drop a couple of podcast launch tips that you're like, all right, this is what we do differently. Go.
Video forward. I mean, it's going to start there, but I bet you have some tactics there because I think we would leverage YouTube out of the gate big time. Yeah, we did not do that. We're doing that currently. And it's totally worth it. We're already seeing a lot of growth, organic growth and social media growth, like feed YouTube, which also feeds our podcast. So that was our big push to get the studio, is to go video forward and lean heavy on that. And then brand deals and all that to help kind of fund the growth, for doing ads and stuff, which we are to grow that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, with YouTube, the discoverability is so much easier than it is on something like iTunes or Spotify or some of those other platforms. It's kind of like when you get on iTunes to listen to a podcast, you kind of know what podcast you're looking for. Typically, you kind of get on iTunes or Spotify and you search for the specific podcast you want to listen to. YouTube is a whole different beast, right? Because YouTube, if I just got done watching a video about podcasting, well, it might suggest a Hustle and Flowchart episode about podcasting, right? So there's a lot more discoverability mechanisms built into YouTube. So yeah, I would basically echo what Joe said and put a lot more focus on video from day one right now. Still go audio. Still, our podcast, the way we've got it set up, we've got some episodes that are only available on audio and then some stuff that you can only find on our YouTube. So we're kind of incentivizing people to be subscribed in both places. Yeah. But depending on which platform you're on, you're actually going to get slightly different content from us.
Yeah. And I would also, so everything what we just said here on the video side, so that's like the media, but also, and this is how we're starting to do stuff now to engineer our own growth, is reach, like go big with guests. Don't feel like your voice doesn't matter. It's not going to land on welcoming ears, because like if you sell yourself and believe in yourself and the mission, the why behind your show, go reach for the people who have an audience already. I mean, we're reaching out, like for some reason, all these NFL players are wanting to be on our show and they're introduced to us, which is rad. But like, that was because we started putting it out there, is that we want the A-list players in the game. And we're just going to talk about what we talk about, but they're all high achievers. Like we could take an athlete, they might not be our type of business owner, but sure as hell are going to leverage that name and the cred they have, the audience they have. And, for paid media, for SEO on YouTube, on the podcast, or, on the website, which is already done well for us. Mm-hmm. But saying all of that, think about how you can engineer growth for yourself if you also sell your show to sponsors, to companies who want to also piggyback on the stuff you're going to do around that name that you bring on, or any name you bring on. You can engineer and say, hey, I'm going to get this kind of reach for this person and for you. If you trust us, us, it helps because we're growth hackers, marketers, and all that. So we kind of know how, all right, cool, right, money from a brand over here. We know we can apply that to growth somehow. You just kind of choose how. But I mean, you could pre-sell your show and get money in the door from sponsors more than the crappy $25 to $30 CPM garbage.
Right.
Don't deal with that. That's agency talk. Don't let them woo you in. We've been wooed in before, but we always flip them. You know, be like, no. We're doing it our way. So like, I would definitely say pre-sell the heck out of your show, but also like pitch. You know, don't just wait for people to show up at your door.
You can essentially find brands to fund the creation and growth of your show, right? If I don't know, you might need a little bit of established credibility in your space before you can do something like this, but you can go to brands and say, hey, I'm starting a podcast. We're talking to this avatar. This avatar is also your ideal client avatar. Why don't you come along for the ride? And then you're with us from day one. You know, stop for us. We've kind of stopped going after the 30-day sponsorship runs where you buy a month of, you know, for whatever the CPM going rate is right now. And we started going to brands and saying, come along for the ride. Come along for a year with us. We'll put you on every single episode. When we go on other people's podcasts, we'll shout your brand out. We'll wear your swag when we're at conferences and stuff. Like, we won't just be a sponsorship, you know, media relationship with you. We'll be evangelists of your brand. We'll be all in with you on your brand and help you grow the hell out of your brand in all of the ways that we put ourselves out there. And you can actually pre-sell brands to get on board with you before you ever even release the first episode, because that media is going to be there forever, right? 2 years from now, people are still going to be listening to your first episode, your second episode, your third episode, and those brands are in there the whole way from the beginning. So that's probably how we would change it up. Go video forward. We would focus on getting brand deals probably before we even put our first episode out there. And then when we finally launched the episode, we would use the money that came in from the brand deal to growth hack the shit out of the show, right? We would go and buy YouTube ads. We would go and purchase advertising in the various podcast apps, you know, Overcast, Podcast Addict, places like that. We would go in and take some of the money and put it into a contest, put it into like a, you know, $5,000 worth of prizes and get people to promote your show and share it and do the whole contest thing. Yeah. But if you land one of these brand deals from day one, you now have the financing to grow the show. So grow with a brand, you know, sell the brand on, you're going to be part of the show. But look, we're not putting all this money in our pockets. Joe and I aren't going to go spend, you know, 6 figures on burritos next month. We're taking this money.
I want to.
And I mean, left to our own devices, we probably would, but we got a business.
It's a bulk phase.
Yeah. We're in a bulk phase. Yeah.
You know.
But we can take the money that the sponsors give us, grow the hell out of our show, and now we're sort of offsetting some of the costs they would have had to pay for anyway, right?
Yeah.
They would have gone and done media buying. They would have bought Facebook ads or YouTube ads or, you know, tried to grow on paid media platforms. Hey, give that money to us instead. We'll evangelize the hell out of you, and we'll still do media buying and grow in the ways you were planning on growing anyway.
Okay, so I've got an idea. I know you guys like my swag and my t-shirts. Let's do a co-branded t-shirt.
Yes.
I'm sure you guys have seen The Water Boy, Adam Sandler.
Oh, yeah.
My mama says CPM is the devil. All we need is John Lee Dumas's face to put on it, and we're good.
We can get him. We'll call him up.
I'm not sure he would go for that specific angle, but I'm sure he'd be down for a collaboration in another way.
Yeah, maybe it's an Instagram reel. I don't know. Like we'll work on that. We'll workshop that a little bit. Yeah. Real quick, like you mentioned YouTube. So let's say that you are starting from scratch and you are going to do podcast and YouTube. Like, what are one or two key just discoverability tips with YouTube? Like what's one or two things, like you do this low hanging fruit to make sure that what you want to be discovered is being discovered on YouTube?
Well, to be honest, this is something we're still figuring out ourselves. Like, YouTube is a fairly new thing for us. But what we're kind of finding out is that to get the click over to the video, you need to really be optimizing the thumbnail and the title, which I think is, you know, pretty common wisdom among YouTube at this point. But like, that thumbnail and that title are what make all the difference for click-through rate.
Of the game.
Like, that's like, if you can dial that in, that's like most of the game. The other things are things that we're just kind of starting to figure out now as we dig into analytics and as the YouTube channel is starting to grow more. We actually just passed 1,000 subscribers like 2 weeks ago. And then after we passed 1,000 subscribers, now it's growing at a much more accelerated rate for whatever reason.
It picked up. Yeah.
So we're starting to actually be able to pull in some data around what's working and what's not working. And the other thing that we're figuring out now is retention. How do we get people to actually, once they click over to the video, which is mostly thumbnail and title, once they click over to the video, how do we get them actually sticking around on the video? So that's the stuff that we're working on now, where we're not on screen for, you know, an hour straight on a podcast. It's lots of cuts. It's cutting between us, cutting between our guests, cutting in B-roll, flashing text on the screen. You need the visuals to keep changing to make people stick around longer. You also need to get past your intro quicker, right? Like one of the things that we were the most guilty of when we first started our podcast, and Joe listened to an episode from like 2 years ago or something, we rambled for 15 minutes before we ever got to the interview. Our intros were 15 minutes, and then we finally went, all right, let's go talk to our guests now. Right now we're like 30 seconds before we get to our guests. We want to get to our guests like that.
Joe, just do a quick beatbox and then we're in. Let's go.
All right, go. Yeah, seriously.
That's new. Go straight to it. Just get right into the content, get into the meat. That'll get people sticking around, right?
Nice.
The other piece of advice I can give is if you've got podcasts that are on, you know, sort of relevant, timely topics, lean into those. Do a little bit of the news jacking, right? Put it into your title.
Or you can maybe take a clip from an episode, chop it up into like a little mini clip, you know, 3 to 5, 10 minutes or whatever, and then SEO around whatever that trending topic is. And then, you know, almost like leverage the guest and them talking about something that's already in the news.
Yeah. And then we're also experimenting with YouTube ads right now, but I don't have a lot to share there yet because it's still very early.
We do have a lot of stuff. So check in about a month.
Nice. Yeah, we'll be checking back with you guys on that. And I know we're short on time. I'm so appreciative that you guys came back to finish this episode and finish it well. Real quick, where do people go to dive into what's the latest and greatest stuff at Hustle and Flowchart?
Find us on YouTube. Yeah, so you can see what we're doing and swipe our stuff. Give us feedback if you're a YouTube rock star at hustleandflowchart.tv. It's a little redirect there. And Podhacker is kind of like everything we do in a box. You know, all the systems, templates, agreements to some of these sponsorships, you know, that we've landed that are not the CPM. You know, so Podhacker is
the
basically
devil.
How we do everything. It's the devil. Yeah. So check us out there. Podhacker.
Now, YouTube tip, my 10-year-old son, it really helps if you go like this. Smash that like button on screen. Yeah. You have to have the big thumb. Smash
All right.
that like button. And that's your next 1,000 subscribers right there. Easily. All right.
Well, credit to
Flow
you.
Bros.
I need to get a mask that looks like a thumbs up, and then Joe can just smash my head, and then it's like smashing. Yeah, there you go.
Love it.
Get it. Dudes, I appreciate you. You're amazing. Everybody out there, make sure that you go hit the subscribe button for real on the Hustle and Flowchart YouTube page. Just like that's a tip in my tip jar for today. I appreciate you all. I'll send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you on the next episode.